As for me,
dare touch that.
my world had
My
turned
eyes,
a new page,
narrowed in
bright and
irritation the
peaceful.
moment I stepped into this supposedly secure facility, were fixed on the man in question. He was a caricature of a researcher, clad in a slovenly t-shirt and jeans, a stark contrast to the crisp lab coats and serious faces surrounding him. And now, he was nonchalantly trying to jam a soda can into the lab's most advanced, ultra-low temperature freezer, a unit dedicated to preserving irreplaceable genetic samples. A shiver of professional dread, a feeling I hadn't anticipated on this routine audit, ran down my spine. Before anyone could fully react, his attention had already shifted, drawn like a moth to the whirring allure of a high-speed centrifuge. With a playful glint in his eye, as if daring a child's toy, he jabbed the emergency stop button. A sickening crack echoed through the room. Glass shattered, liquid sprayed, and the delicate experiment inside was abruptly, violently halted. The air crackled with a collective gasp of horror. My jaw tightened, a cold fury rising within me. I grabbed the arm of a terrified young researcher nearby. "Who is that imbecile? Who hired him?" I whispered, my voice dangerously low. The young man flinched, glancing nervously around before shushing me with wide eyes. "Sir, are you new here? That's Vance. He was brought in from the top. He's Allura's boyfriend. Our CEO. Just bear with it. He usually just hangs around her office. He rarely comes down to the lab to cause trouble. Allura's boyfriend. My wife's boyfriend." The words hit me like a physical blow, a cold, sharp stab of betrayal. My legal wife. The woman whose company, my company, funded by my family's corporation, he was currently destroying. The blood roared in my ears. I felt an almost uncontrollable urge to march over, grab him by his ridiculous shirt, and throw him out. But years of corporate training, of operating in the cold, calculated world of high finance, kicked in. Emotional outbursts solved nothing. They only alerted the rats. I took a deep breath, forcing down the surge of anger. This wasn't just about a broken machine or spoiled samples. This was a festering wound at the heart of our operations, and it ran deeper than I could have imagined. My initial mission from my father, the chairman of Hayes Corporation, had been a final audit for our groundbreaking Starlight Dawn drug development project. "Ethan," he'd said earlier that morning, his voice firm over the phone, "you're from a research background. You know how labs operate. This final assessment isn't just about the budget. It's about understanding the management, getting a feel for your future responsibilities." I had trusted Allura implicitly, believing this would be a mere formality. Now, standing amidst the chaos Vance had wrought, that trust had evaporated, leaving behind a bitter void. Instead of confronting Vance directly, I walked calmly to the administrative office, presented my executive auditor credentials from Hayes Corporation headquarters, and requested a temporary ID badge. "Internal audit," I stated, my voice even. No fanfare, no announcements, especially not to Allura. Just quietly process this. They complied with deferential efficiency. Armed with my temporary badge, I found a discreet corner, out of Vance's immediate line of sight, and began to observe. He was still lurking by the damaged centrifuge, his gaze now fixated on the prominent red emergency stop button, a mischievous glint in his eyes. A senior researcher, Dr. Reed, approached him, his voice laced with forced calm. "Vance, perhaps you'd like to step away from the equipment? It's for your safety." Vance merely sneered, an expression of entitled annoyance. "What? Only you guys get to be around these toys. I'm just looking." He took another step closer, his fingers hovering menacingly near the cold metal casing. Dr. Reed's face paled. "No, it's not that, Vance. It's really for your own safety." Vance scoffed, shoved his hands into his pockets, and turned away with a petulant shrug, as if to leave. The tension in the lab momentarily eased. Everyone held their breath. Then, in a single, fluid motion, he spun back, a smirk blooming on his face, and slammed his palm onto the red button. Crunch! The harsh shriek of metal grinding to an abrupt halt ripped through the air. The centrifuge, still spinning at immense velocity, shuddered. The tubes inside, unable to withstand the sudden force, exploded. Shards of glass and precious liquid samples sprayed from the cracks, splattering across the pristine white surfaces. Silence. A deathly, absolute silence descended upon the lab. It lasted only a beat, Then the room erupted. "My samples!" someone cried out, a voice thick with despair. 3 months of cultivation. This data was for my lecture today. Dr. Reed burst from his office, his face darkening with a frightening intensity. He glared at Vance, his hands clenching into fists, jaw tight. For a moment, I thought he would physically assault him, but then his shoulders sagged, his fists relaxing into a gesture of utter defeat. He closed his eyes, took a deep, shaky breath, and when he opened them, only a weary resignation remained. "What are you standing around for?" he rasped, his voice hoarse. "Clean this up. Assess the equipment damage. See if anything can be salvaged." The administrative manager, a nervous man named Arthur, rushed over, his face etched with concern. He'd noticed my earlier interest in the lab and hurried in when he heard the commotion. Seeing the devastation, his face crumpled. Vance, however, seized the opportunity. "What kind of shoddy equipment do you people have?" he whined, pointing at the wreckage. "I barely touched the button and it exploded. Or is someone cutting corners, using cheap gear and pocketing the difference?" Vance's talent for immediate, audacious blame-shifting was truly astounding. He, the intentional saboteur, had in an instant painted himself as the victim. Arthur's face froze, as if he'd just swallowed something foul. But just as quickly, his expression morphed into a fawning, apologetic smile. "Oh, Mr. Vance, are you all right? You must be so shaken. Were you hurt? I'll investigate this immediately. I assure you and Allure a full explanation. It's quite a mess here. Perhaps you'd like to return to the office, relax, play some games? Let us handle this. I promise we'll get to the bottom of it." Vance preened, his ego appeased. He snorted, a dismissive sound, and finally sauntered out. Arthur watched his retreating back disappear down the corridor, then rubbed his temples, a picture of exhaustion. I called him back. "Manager Arthur, does this sort of thing happen often?" He started, glancing around before pulling me into a quiet corner. His face was a mask of misery and helplessness. "Between us, sir," he whispered, "since Mr. Vance arrived, there hasn't been a single peaceful day in this institute. Just last week, he decided he wanted to participate in research and tried to enter the lab with a cup of iced coffee. Lab regulations strictly forbid food or drink. The new supervisor, not yet aware of his connection to Allure, blocked him and gave him a lecture. The result? He snuck away, and when no one was looking, he plugged in an unauthorized device, tripping the entire building's circuit breakers. We lost power for hours. By the time we restored it, most of the precious samples in the freezers were ruined. And what was the consequence? I pressed. Arthur gave a bitter laugh. Allure returned, blamed lax management, and immediately fired the supervisor, Vance. He didn't even have to write a formal apology. Hearing this, I thought of the colossal funding requests and the perpetually stalled project progress. A slow burn of righteous anger ignited in my chest. Just then, Arthur's phone rang. He glanced at me apologetically and answered. Before he could say a word, Vance's arrogant voice boomed from the other end. "My takeout order's here. It's at reception. Get someone to bring it up to my office. I'm starving. Hurry." Arthur stammered. Yes, immediately," and hung up. He turned to the room, calling out, "Who can help deliver his food?" No one moved. A heavy silence filled the lab. At this point, I had almost entirely lost faith in the project. Yet, I looked at the dedicated researchers, still diligently working amidst the wreckage, and remembered the countless patients eagerly awaiting the Starlight Dawn drug. They deserved better. I approached the lead administrator and requested all project documentation, both physical and digital. After making copies, I found a quiet corner and plugged my USB into my laptop, beginning to sift through the data. Not long after, a message popped up on my phone from my father. "Ethan, meeting on Starlight Dawn this afternoon. Need clinical results. Personally verify all data. Absolute accuracy required." I replied with a terse received. As I prepared to delve deeper, a shadow fell over my desk. Vance. He was clearly bored again, wandering aimlessly. He peered at my screen, crammed with complex charts and dense data, and asked, "Hey, what are you looking at?" "Project data," I replied, my voice clipped, my hand instinctively tightening around the USB drive. My reluctance only piqued his interest. He zeroed in on the USB, and with a sudden, rude gesture, snatched it. "Let me see that." His action was abrupt and disrespectful. I twisted my wrist, my brow furrowing. "This is classified material. You don't have clearance." Vance burst into a loud, mocking laugh, deliberately raising his voice for everyone in the lab to hear. "Clearance? Do you even know who I am? And you're asking me for clearance?" I looked at his arrogant face, a sardonic smile playing on my lips. "Who are you?" My disdainful smile infuriated him. His face reddened as he bellowed. "I'm Allura's husband. This entire research institute belongs to my wife's pharmaceutical company." "Allura," I said, a cold laugh escaping my lips. "Forgive me, but even if you were Allura, you still wouldn't have the authority to view my data without proper clearance." My unyielding stance stripped him of all pretense. His face contorted with rage, a fleeting glimpse of something truly ugly. He suddenly pointed at me, his voice rising to a furious shout. "I see you. You're clearly sneaking around, copying data. I'm inspecting you. If you don't hand that over, I have every reason to suspect you're a commercial spy, stealing the Starlight Dawn Project's secrets." His accusation reverberated through the lab, plunging it into instant silence. Every eye turned to us. Commercial spy. It was a heavy, poisonous accusation, enough to ruin anyone's reputation. Manager Arthur, hearing the commotion, rushed over, his forehead beaded with sweat. "Mr. Vance, you can't just throw around accusations like that." Vance, seeing an audience, became even more emboldened. He pointed emphatically at my laptop screen. "It's obvious. Clear evidence. A stranger like him, with access to core data, refusing my inspection? What else could he be but a spy?" "Manager Arthur, why haven't you called the police to arrest him?" His blatant twisting of facts made me laugh, a cold, internal sound. Ignorant and malicious, he had both in spades. Arthur looked from me to Vance's belligerent face, wringing his hands, utterly at a loss. Seeing his hesitation, Vance exploded. "Fine, none of you dare to deal with this, do you? Let's see if Allura believes me." He pulled out his phone, his voice aggressive. "I'm calling Allura now." The video call connected quickly. Allura's face appeared on the screen, her voice laced with concern. "Vance, what's wrong?" Vance, who had just been a raging bully, instantly transformed, his face contorted in a pathetic, victimized pout. "Allura, you need to control your staff. There's a commercial spy in your lab, stealing data. I caught him red-handed, and they're all trying to cover for him." "A spy?" Allura sounded genuinely surprised, then quickly adopted a soothing tone. "Who would dare steal data from my lab? And bully my husband? Don't be angry. Show me who it is. I need to see." Vance, beaming triumphantly, slowly rotated his phone towards me, deliberately raising it high. His lips silently formed two words: "You're dead." I calmly reached out and took the phone. "You wanted to see me, Allura?" As my face appeared in the frame, Allura's expression instantly stiffened. Her eyes widened, shifting from surprise to disbelief. "Ethan," her voice rose sharply. "What are you doing there?" A cold, ironic smile touched my lips. If I hadn't come, how would I have discovered that our esteemed CEO, Allura, has another husband named Vance? Her brows knitted immediately, a flicker of impatience in her eyes, as if I were nothing more than a nuisance. "Ethan, can you just speak normally? Stop with the veiled insults." Her irritation grew visible. "Don't be childish. We can discuss this when I get back. I'm at a crucial conference, one that concerns the future of the company." Her voice, by the end, was full of accusation. "I don't have time for your silly games." "Silly games," I repeated, a bitter laugh escaping me. On the screen, Allura's perfectly made-up face was clouded with annoyance. Behind her, the prominent banner of a global biotech and pharma summit was clearly visible. She was at such an important international conference, yet she'd interrupted it to take a call from her lover. And I, her legal husband, the primary investor in the very company she managed, was being treated as a disruptive child. Even now, her primary concern wasn't the exposure or the damage to her reputation, but how to protect her lover, how to continue the charade, and how to deflect blame back onto me. I looked directly into the screen, at her beautiful face, and found it suddenly terrifyingly alien and fake. "Allura," I said, my voice low and cold as ice, "do you think I'm playing games with you? My words were like hammer blows. Vance, still oblivious to the true relationship between Allure and me, chimed in. Allure, why are you even talking to this thief? Tell them to arrest him. Allure's eyes, prompted by his words, hardened. Ethan, you have no authority to be in this lab. You've accessed confidential data without permission, which is a violation of regulations. Vance is my special research assistant. He has the right to handle anything here. Give back the data. Authority? I scoffed, a truly derisive laugh. You speak to me of authority? All my patience had finally snapped. I stared directly into the phone's camera, articulating each word with crystalline clarity. Allure, I have now completed my assessment of your judgment and your management capabilities. The result is 2 words, utter disappointment. With that, I didn't bother to see her face drain of color. I simply tossed the phone back to Vance. He fumbled to catch it, immediately yelling into the screen, Allure, do you see? That's his attitude. Turning my back, I pulled out my own phone and calmly dialed my father. Father, I said, my voice not loud, but resonating clearly through the suddenly silent lab. No need for further assessment. My recommendation is to cancel the project. And tell Allure to bring the divorce papers to the lab to meet me. My words landed like a splash of cold water on hot oil. The lab erupted in a moment of stunned chaos, then quickly dissolved into a deathly silence, an oppressive chill in the air that seemed to stop everyone's breath. No one dared to speak or move. Even Vance, in his ignorance, could sense that something was terribly wrong, but accustomed to Allure's indulgence, he tried to maintain his arrogant facade. His voice, however, trembled as he blustered. You're trying to scare me? You think a phone call makes you powerful? I'm telling you, wait till Allure gets back and... Silence. A cold, sharp command cut him off, but it wasn't from me. It came from the phone still clutched in Vance's trembling hand. The voice, though faintly shaky, was razor-sharp, chilling all who heard it. It was Allure. Vance stiffened, staring blankly at the screen. Now, a middle-aged man in a sharp suit appeared in the frame. I recognized him immediately. Mr. Hayes, my father's senior aide. He offered a polite, distant smile, gently placing a hand on Allure's shoulder. His voice was formal and dispassionate. Ms. Allure, the board has decided to temporarily suspend all your corporate positions. All current responsibilities will be temporarily assumed by me. Please cooperate with the handover and return to headquarters immediately for an investigation. Allure gasped, struggling to protest. I haven't received any notification. You have no right. This is the chairman's decision, Mr. Hayes interrupted smoothly, his expression unwavering. The video call abruptly disconnected, the screen going black. I surveyed the stunned faces in the deathly quiet room. Allow me to reintroduce myself, I said, my voice calm and authoritative. I am Ethan Hayes, an auditor dispatched from the Hayes Corporation headquarters, responsible for assessing this Starlight Dawn project. I unclipped the temporary ID from my shirt and held it up for all to see. Vance stood rooted to the spot, phone still in hand, his face ashen, blood drained, leaving only raw terror. Hayes Corporation, he stammered, his voice a hoarse whisper. He's the heir of Hayes Corporation. Someone in the crowd sucked in a sharp breath. A ripple of hushed, horrified whispers spread through the room. All their unspoken questions, their years of wondering why I dared to act with such impunity, why a single call could suspend a CEO at an international conference. They now had their answer. Vance's legs gave way. If not for the lab bench beside him, he would have collapsed. I turned to Manager Arthur, my voice cold, each word distinct. From this moment forward, you will act on my behalf and assume full control of this laboratory. First, seal all entrances and exits. No one is to leave or enter without my explicit permission. Second, secure all project data and records, both digital and physical, ensuring their integrity. Third, the Starlight Dawn project is suspended indefinitely. All associated accounts and funds are immediately frozen. Fourth, notify the corporate audit and legal departments to dispatch personnel here immediately. The oppressive atmosphere was so heavy that even breathing felt constrained. I stood in the harsh, cold light of the fluorescent lamps, looking at the bewildered faces around me, and for the first time, felt a cruel stillness descend upon everything. Manager Arthur nodded, turning swiftly. Understood. I'll get to it immediately. The tense atmosphere in the lab quickly gave way to a restored order as staff moved to execute my directives. My gaze returned to Vance. His face was paper white, his body trembling like a leaf in the wind, his eyes wide with fear. I glanced at my phone. A cold smile touched my lips. It takes about an hour to get here from the conference. You might want to use that time to consider how you'll compensate for the damage you've caused in this lab. As predicted, precisely 1 hour later, Allure burst into the laboratory. She was breathless, her face devoid of color, her usually meticulously styled hair disheveled, her entire demeanor a picture of desperate disarray. Gone was the elegant composure of the CEO. But what awaited her was not my angry confrontation as she might have imagined, but the sight of Vance, his face pale and almost unable to stand, flanked by 2 police officers. "Vance!" Allure shrieked, her voice trembling with shock and disbelief. "Mr. Vance," one of the officers stated calmly, his voice ringing clearly in the silent room. "You are suspected of economic sabotage, disruption of business operations, and endangering public safety. Please come with us to the station for questioning." Allure took a step forward, but at those words, her feet seemed to root to the floor. Vance saw her and immediately thrashed, as if grasping a lifeline. "Allure, help me. They're taking me away. Tell them. I didn't mean to. It was just an accident." Allure turned, her gaze finally moving past Vance to land on me. Her complexion shifted from white to ashen, her eyes a mix of panic, pleading, and a faint, lingering hope. "Ethan," she whispered, then almost lunged, sidestepping the officers and frantically grabbing my arm. Her fingertips were ice cold, but her grip was strong, betraying the raw fear within her. "Vance, even if he made a mistake, it's not enough to call the police. Tell them to let him go. Can't we handle this internally? Taking him to the police station, what kind of scandal will that cause?" I looked down at her hand clutching my sleeve, my voice chillingly calm. "Handle it internally?" I let out a contemptuous laugh. "Allure, look around you. This isn't a child's game." He deliberately destroyed research equipment worth millions, disrupting a national priority project funded with hundreds of millions. "Do you honestly think this can be handled internally?" I gestured to the wreckage around the lab. "Or do you believe the CEO's reputation is somehow above the law?" The question silenced her. Her face grew paler. She stammered, her voice frantic and broken. No, it's not like that. Ethan, please listen. Vance and I knew each other since childhood. He just doesn't understand these things. He didn't mean any harm. Don't be so hard on him." Just then, the lead officer stepped forward, stopping directly in front of her, his tone grave and clear. "Are you Allure?" She froze, instinctively nodding. "We have received a formal complaint. You are suspected of large-scale corporate embezzlement and abuse of power for personal gain. Please come with us to the station to cooperate with our investigation." The words struck her like lightning from a clear sky. Allure reeled back, her face a mask of horror. Her eyes, filled with pain and indignation, fixated on me. You even reported me to the police? Ethan, how could you be so cruel?" "Cruel?" I looked at her, calm and unflinching, my voice like steel. "When you turned this lab into a chaotic mess for his sake, when you trampled on the interests of an entire corporation, did you ever consider this day would come?" The officers said no more, moving forward to carry out their duty. Allure screamed in despair, struggling and weeping. "Let me go. I won't go. Ethan, you can't do this to me." But it was futile. 2 officers restrained her, leading her away step by step. As she was escorted towards the door, she passed Vance. He watched her, the woman who had been his sole support, now also in handcuffs. His legs turned to jelly, and he completely collapsed, defeated. She was too broken to even cry out anymore. Amidst the complex stares of every employee in the laboratory, Allure and Vance were led away by the police, one after the other. I watched them disappear, my face devoid of emotion. My phone vibrated in my pocket. It was a call from Mr. Hayes, the lawyer. "Mr. Hayes." His voice was calm and professional as always. "Allure and Vance have been detained. I will continue to monitor the legal proceedings." "Understood," I replied concisely. "As for the divorce papers and asset recovery, proceed as planned." I hung up. Immediately, my phone rang again. It was my father. Is it handled? He asked. Almost. They've been taken away. The lab is secured. I reported succinctly, summarizing only what was necessary. Be home by 7. My father's voice was low, leaving no room for argument. Aunt Serafina will bring her daughter for dinner. The girl has some interesting ideas about pharmaceutical investment. You two should talk. Perhaps there's potential for a long-term collaboration. I instantly understood the unspoken agenda behind this family dinner. I glanced around the now clearing lab, the atmosphere still heavy, and simply replied, I understand. I'll be home on time. At dinner, perhaps still reeling from the events in the lab, I had little appetite for conversation. In contrast, the young woman, Serafina, seemed genuinely interested in me, conversing warmly and skillfully. But until Mr. Hayes brought back the signed divorce agreement, my mind had no room for any pleasantries, nor could I return any overtures of goodwill. The interrogation room lights at the police station were cold and harsh. Allure sat on a metal chair, her hands clenched so tightly her knuckles were white. Her once meticulously made-up face was now gaunt, a mix of despair, lingering defiance, and a desperate glimmer of hope. When Mr. Hayes entered, briefcase in hand, his face impassive, she instantly looked up, like a drowning person spotting a lifeline. Mr. Hayes, did Ethan send you? He changed his mind, didn't he? I knew it. He wouldn't be so heartless. But Mr. Hayes offered no reply. He simply sat calmly opposite her and slowly placed a thick file on the table. Ms. Allure, I represent Hayes Corporation, and I am also authorized by Mr. Ethan Hayes to handle all matters related to you. He opened the briefcase. Inside, it was not the reconciliation papers she hoped for, but a voluminous dossier. Based on testimony, surveillance evidence, and preliminary audit results, Mr. Hayes began, his voice slow and even, as if reading a verdict. Allure and Vance are suspected of economic sabotage and disruption of business, causing direct losses exceeding $20 million, not including indirect damages from the project's suspension. Allure's lips trembled. Those funds, part of it was his salary, part was bonuses, and some were advances. Mr. Hayes calmly adjusted his glasses, his voice still placid. A person with only an associate's degree and no research background, receiving the salary and bonuses of a senior specialist, far exceeding industry standards. On what basis, do you think? He placed a bank statement in front of her. And these advances, for example, a transfer of $500,000 with no loan agreement. Ms. Allure, do you consider this reasonable? Each question was a hammer blow to Allure's chest. Finally, Mr. Hayes produced another document. By resolution of the Board of Directors, you are hereby dismissed from all positions within Hayes Corporation and all its subsidiaries. This is the official notification. He then produced a third file, his voice devoid of emotion. Furthermore, the corporation will initiate civil litigation to recover all ill-gotten gains and demand full compensation for all damages you have caused. Before Allure could react, Mr. Hayes pushed a third set of documents across the table. Additionally, by personal authorization from Mr. Ethan Hayes, I formally notify you of his petition for a unilateral divorce. All marital assets will revert to him. These are the detailed terms. Please review them. No, I don't agree. Allure recoiled as if burned, her voice shrill and piercing. I want to see Ethan. This must be a momentary anger. I don't believe it. Mr. Hayes, as if expecting her reaction, calmly took out a tablet and played a video. In the frame, Vance's voice was clearly audible. I'm Allure's husband. This entire research institute belongs to my wife's company, Allure. Immediately after, the screen switched to a series of intimate photos of the two of them, accompanied by a long audio recording of them discussing manipulating investment funds and the Starlight Dawn project. Allure's body went rigid, her blood seeming to run cold. Mr. Hayes's voice was icy. If you refuse to sign, I think you understand the consequences without me needing to elaborate. If these come out, your career and reputation will be irrevocably destroyed. He paused, looking directly at her. If you sign, at least you can retain some semblance of dignity. This is Mr. Hayes's final stance. Only then did Allure truly understand. I was not joking. She had truly lost everything. A monstrous fear consumed her. Hot tears streamed down her face, falling onto the cold tabletop. In a daze of utter despair, Allura's trembling hand reached for the pen and scrawled her name on the divorce agreement. As the pen touched the paper, she seemed to lose all strength, collapsing onto the chair, her voice a weak plea. "Let me see him, just one last time, please." Mr. Hayes collected all the documents, his voice as calm as ever. "Mr. Hayes does not wish to see you. You're on your own." He turned and left, the door closing, cutting off all remaining sound from the interrogation room. I stood by my office window, the city lights beginning to illuminate the night sky. My phone vibrated again. It was Mr. Hayes. "Mr. Hayes, Ms. Allura has signed." "Good," I replied briefly. "She wanted to see you one last time." "No need," I said, and hung up. Outside, the city's dazzling lights stretched out like a cold, golden ribbon. One act concluded, leaving behind only a mess. My phone vibrated again. A message from Serafina. "Are you free tomorrow night? Let's have dinner." I looked at the screen and replied with a single word. "Yes." Perhaps this would be a new beginning. After being released on bail, the first thing Allura did was rush to the mansion that had once been our home. Rain poured down, water streaming from her hair, mixing with her tears, creating long streaks on her pale face. She knelt outside the cold iron gate, looking towards the lit windows, sobbing uncontrollably. "Ethan, I know I was wrong. Please, just see me once." The butler stood beside me, asking softly, "Sir, Ms. Allura says she wants to see you. What do you say?" I stood in the study, and through the moisture-fogged window, I could see the small, pathetic figure of a woman kneeling in the rain. "Ignore her," I said coldly. "Bring all her belongings she left behind outside. Return everything. Tell her I will not see her. If she persists, call security." "Yes, sir," the butler replied, his voice trembling slightly, not daring to question further. I drew the heavy curtains, completely separating myself from the outside world. With Allura, I had nothing left to say. A few days later, Serafina and I met at a French restaurant. The ambience was quiet, the candlelight warm, the piano music soft and inviting. She was gentle, polite, and intelligent, and our conversation flowed easily and naturally. She raised her wine glass, a soft smile gracing her lips. "Perhaps you don't remember, Mr. Hayes, but we actually attended the same university. I was 2 years below you. Back then, your presence in academic competitions earned you quite a few admirers." I was slightly surprised. "Really? I apologize, I don't recall clearly." She shook her head gently, smiling. "It's all right. I admired you greatly back then. I had intended to confess my feelings at your graduation, but before I could, I heard you were engaged to Allura." My hand tightened slightly around my wine glass. So, someone had quietly watched me, and I had never known. Compared to Allura's subsequent actions, this belated sincerity touched a chord within me. "That's all in the past now," I said with a faint, calm smile. "Indeed," Serafina replied, her eyes clear and deep. "But being able to sit with you like this, I feel very fortunate." Before she could finish, a soaking wet figure unexpectedly burst into the restaurant, drawing all eyes to our table. It was Allura. She was completely drenched, her hair disheveled, looking like a lost soul. She lunged towards our table, her voice hoarse, crying and trembling. "Ethan, I finally found you. Please, don't treat me like this anymore. I know I was wrong, truly wrong. Forgive me, don't divorce me, please. I promise I'll be good from now on. I won't disappoint you again." I frowned, pushing her hand away, my voice cold. "Allura, you signed the agreement yourself. We are divorced. Please leave. Don't disturb my dinner with my friend." "No, I won't go," she shrieked, tears mixing with rainwater. "If you don't forgive me, I'll die right here." Allura began to scream and cry hysterically, completely out of control. I subtly tilted my head towards the restaurant manager, who had been drawn by the commotion, and calmly said, "This young lady is disturbing our meal. Could you please handle this?" The manager immediately understood, promptly calling security. 2 guards approached, gently but firmly escorting her out. Her struggles, her cries and pleas, echoed through the lobby and gradually faded at the door. I took a deep breath, trying to suppress the rising discomfort, then turned back to Serafina, my voice light but apologetic. I'm sorry you had to witness that. She set her wine glass down, shaking her head gently, her eyes calm and firm. No need to apologize. On the contrary, seeing how decisive you can be, I feel very reassured. It means you've truly moved past the past. I was slightly taken aback, not expecting such a reaction. Serafina smiled, a faint blush on her cheeks. She took a deep breath, as if gathering courage, and looked directly into my eyes. Actually, meeting you today, besides my family's wishes, was also my own. Ethan Hayes, I like you. From university until now, that feeling has never changed. I know saying it now might be sudden, but I don't want to miss another chance. Can you give me an opportunity? I looked into her clear eyes, a complex emotion stirring within me, a mix of appreciation and a quiet thoughtfulness. I said slowly, my voice sincere, Serafina, thank you for being honest, but I can't immediately start a new relationship right now. A hint of disappointment flickered in her eyes, but quickly brightened. Her voice was soft yet resolute. That's all right. I'm willing to start over with you as friends, to get to know each other seriously and slowly, as long as you give me some time. Her smile was radiant under the lights. I nodded gently. Looking at that genuine smile, I felt as if a small part of the ice in my heart had finally melted. Months later, Hayes Corporation had completely transformed. I formally took over the core business, including the Starlight Dawn project. After eliminating the remnants of corruption and the chaotic management structure from Allura's era, a new research team, introduced by Serafina, was brought in, accelerating progress beyond all expectations. Serafina and I collaborated seamlessly, our relationship steadily deepening. Both families began discussing an alliance, and a lavish engagement ceremony was held. As the celebration reached its peak, I received a call from Mr. Hayes, the lawyer. He said simply, "Mr. Hayes, Allura and Vance were arrested yesterday." I gave a quiet and hung up. Looking up, I saw Serafina not far away, radiant as she chatted with guests. She turned, seeming to feel my gaze, and offered a soft smile, raising her glass in a silent toast. I raised mine in return. 3 years later, under my leadership, Hayes Corporation had doubled its market value. The Starlight Dawn project was officially launched, becoming a new profit driver and solidifying my position in the pharmaceutical industry. I proposed to Serafina, and a few months later, our wedding was a simple, warm affair. The shadows of the past had faded with time, leaving only a peaceful light. Occasionally, Mr. Hayes would mention news related to Allura. It wasn't that I specifically asked, but as he still managed her old legal files, some information had to be reported. For instance, Allura was sentenced to 6 years in prison for embezzlement, abuse of power, and misappropriation of company assets. During her incarceration, no one visited her. As for Vance, he had convinced her to flee the country, claiming they would invest and rebuild their lives abroad, but he had actually sold her to a human trafficking organization in a remote border region. Both believed they would escape with money, only to fall into hell. Allura was exploited and abused until her body and spirit were completely broken. 6 months later, local authorities, in coordination with an international task force, rescued them. When they were found, she was disoriented and physically ravaged, while Vance was left crippled after a brawl in the camp. Both were deported, living on the fringes of society, without pity, only contempt and neglect. These snippets of news, sometimes relayed by well-meaning acquaintances, barely registered a ripple in my heart. They were like pebbles dropped into a deep lake, causing a momentary, small disturbance before sinking into oblivion. I was no longer burdened by the past. Now, my entire focus was on planning the future for Hayes Corporation and caring for Serafina, my pregnant wife. One afternoon, as I was working through documents in my study, Serafina entered with a plate of fruit. "Oh, by the way," she said softly, "I read a news article the other day that I found quite thought-provoking." I looked up, accepting the fruit plate. "What news?" It was about a couple, a man and a woman, rescued from a northern border region who, upon returning home, were promptly arrested again for fraud. The report didn't use their real names, just aliases, but the descriptions of their backgrounds were strikingly similar to Allura and Vance. Her voice was calm, as if relaying an insignificant piece of information. Apparently, they were once victims of trafficking, lived through terrible hardship, but after being rescued, they refused to repent and continued to commit crimes. I bent my head to sign the last document in my hand, merely replying, "Is that so?" No particular emotion stirred within me, because I knew the path they chose was their own. The hell they entered, they walked into themselves. The ghosts of the past would rot away in the depths they had chosen.